Hi everyone, welcome to our monthly live webinar. And today we are going to talk about the breaking the innovation trap, how leaders can restart growth and stay competitive. My name is Lesya Dymyd, and I also have Guy Martindale from DPMG, who is here with me. Let's start from the innovation and leadership. You probably have heard about the saying, managers do things right, leaders do the right things. Good managers do not necessarily make good leaders. Good leaders can be also poor managers. This is because these two jobs are not the same. In fact, they are very different, even though they have similar characteristics. They have to drive human capacity and organizational capacity to innovate and drive change. Great organizations value both leaders who can see the opportunities for the future and drive change, but also they need managers who can make those opportunities come a reality. Managers make sure organizations run effectively, well, and do not turn into a chaos. Leaders, on the other hand, develop vision of new reality and directions. They empower people to produce useful change. Let me give you an example of a very known company today, NVIDIA. So founded in 1993, it's emerged as a GPU designer and producer with a vision of bringing a 3D graphics to the gaming and multimedia markets. 10 years ago, the CEO of NVIDIA was saying that they were spending roughly 30% of revenue to the R&D and innovation. Their main competitor was Intel with the CPUs. And the main differentiator for this company was a GPU for the AI application. They realized they need to be different from their competitor with a strong position. So they get closer with the software ecosystems and those who were early adopters of the AI applications. So today, NVIDIA is one of the largest and probably the first leading the AI revolution with its AI platforms providing GPU for the AI applications and also expanding towards robotics. If you take an example of the research and development expenses, you can also see that it's true that NVIDIA has been spending roughly between 20% up to 30% for the R&D development and innovation. Of course, it depends on the year and on the revenue, annual revenue. But these figures are true. They've been heavily investing into the R&D and development. And here you can see some of other examples how NVIDIA is developing a software for Apple Vision Pro, a sort of digital twins application where engineers and designers can create a virtual environment and see how the solutions can be used and designed online and then created in real life. Another example of a less fortunate company is Nokia. In 2008, a company was roughly having 40% of the market share. So it used to be one of the most successful companies in the mobile market, providing the hardware, providing the phones for people. However, in 2013, some of the resources said that the mobile giant is failing. And of course, there were multiple reasons why it's happened, because if we need to analyze the history of the company. However, the pivotal moment happened in 2007 when Apple introduced the iPhone. And as said in Nokia's executive speeches in 2011, Nokia has missed the moment of disruption. When Apple introduced the iPhone, they also created what we call as software developers, a platform that software developers could quickly build applications for the iPhone. So they missed the ecosystem change and shift from the hardware towards combination of hardware and software devices. As I said earlier, there were multiple factors why Nokia failed, but some of those are provided here. They missed a pivotal industry shift from product to platform competition. There was also lack of strategic decisions and dysfunctional organizational structures. And because the company has become so big and successful, there was a growing complexity. And the result, innovations become stagnating, and there was ineffective innovation management process inside the company. So let me give you a good explanation of what is a success syndrome. Nokia is a good example of what happened with the companies when they become successful, powerful, but unable to change and unable to innovate. The success syndrome is a potential danger for many organizations, especially those who are large and successful, but also for many managers. Assuming that company creates the right strategy, managers start to put in place the right people, the right structure, the right processes and behaviors and cultures. So as a result, the companies start to grow, it performs well, it meets the key performance indicators. Over time, the company becomes larger and bigger. So managers continue to put in place better processes, better procedures, and the company as a result even increase in size and becomes even bigger and grow faster, which is quite good, right? So it's increased the performance. At the same time, this phenomenon increases chances of inertia. So people become reluctant to change. Because people start to learn that certain behaviors and certain processes are rewarded, they start to take less risk and start to engage in the behaviors which leads to success. And very often such behaviors as risk-taking and exploration of new opportunities is not well rewarded in large organizations. So there is a resistance to change and difficult to change, even if the threats and dangers become really obvious. So the company can develop an innovation, even if it tries to capture these new opportunities, but very seldom, because of the complexity and bureaucracy, it's very seldom can drive this innovation towards something that can be successfully commercialized on the market. And industry has good examples of Kodak, BlackBerry, Blockbuster, and Skype. Those are organizations that were successful and leaders in the industry at some point of time, but were unable to change and grasp those innovations. Even though some of those organizations, they had innovations, they had new developments, but they were not able to really transform themselves and create another pivotal moment for their companies. So what is happening from the point of view of evolution of the company? It goes through three large stages, which is variation, selection, and retentions. Typically, a company appears as a small startup or a small unit, and it's characterized by the exploration, where the research, speed, autonomy, discovery, and different test of different opportunities. The second stage is a growth stage, where companies put cultures, formal organizations, processes, and procedures. They are focusing on the growth opportunities and trying to meet the KPI, key performance indicators. And finally, in the exploitation phase, there is a novelty in production. This phase is where there is efficiency, stability, and control. So managers need to be ambidextrous, meaning that they need to explore and exploit at the same time. Exploration means they need to search for opportunities that can create their future for tomorrow. But exploitation means that they need to also be effective to run the business of today. The incremental, this model exists really well when the changes are incremental and companies and managers can go through the incremental changes, which does not really create a radical shifts in the industry or inside the company or markets. However, we can also observe that recent changes, the pace of changes has significantly increased due to the development of different technologies. This is why it's become less and less possible to take too long time to adapt to new changes. With these shifts become rapidly increased, the failure rate of the companies also increases. So large companies can fail faster. In the past, managers had around a decade to reorient, to make the changes inside the companies. Today, managers only have several years in order to react and in order to create momentum and avoid being irrelevant for the market. So as you see, these types of changes become faster. That's why managers and organizations need to be really proactive in grasping the changes and new opportunities. And what can managers do today in order to boost the culture of innovation? Here are some examples. Of course, it's essential to have the leadership commitment. And lean principles can be valuable principles for those organizations that want to encourage agility and commitment to innovation. They need to encourage innovation across different units and across different levels of the company. Managers also need to involve everyone in the innovation culture in order to create inclusive environment for sharing ideas, but also provide tools and resources for making those ideas being tested and also created and mutualized in the organization. So there is a need to encourage experimentation. And finally, of course, learn from the failures and encourage success, celebrate success. If there is a good innovation, commercializations of new products and services, this needs to be rewarded among the employees and project teams. And here are some of the examples of outcomes of innovation. When companies engage into innovation, it creates new products and services. It develops new platform design. It speeds up the time to market for new products and services and also business models. They also have a higher chances to come up with a breakthrough that can actually help a company to remain relevant and competitive on the market and in the industries. So we covered the innovation piece in the leadership and organizational performance. Now I'd like to give a floor to Guy, who will be talking about the leadership as a critical missing link for companies to achieve success through innovation. Guy, back to you.
Tying that to lean transformation, it all starts with having a long-term philosophy from a lean perspective. A long-term philosophy is something that goes on the order of years. It's a way of running a business and not just the flavor of the month type thing that you need to work on. Companies that take on lean as a business, like Toyota, they've done it for hundreds of years, and they have to continue to work at it at a pace that goes year after year after year. But the 4 Ps of a lean organization start with that long-term thinking, that long-term philosophy. Once you have that long-term philosophy in place, we go looking at, from a lean perspective, how to eliminate waste out of a process. And eliminating waste out of the process allows you to be more efficient in a business and do more with less. In order to do that, though, you need to work with your people and partners. And people and partners will be all your employees, your suppliers, and even your customers to work together as one harmonious unit to be able to eliminate waste out of a process over that long-term thinking, with an end result of getting to what we call problem solving, whereas we get to the top of that pyramid and everybody in the business becomes a problem solver and we're all eliminating waste out of the business. But in order to do this, what we're starting to see in the last 10 years in many businesses is that this starts at the top and really focusing on leadership at the people and partner level. And it always begins with leadership at an executive level. I'm talking about the executive leadership team at the top of the business. But why do we look at the executive side of it? Why is it executive leadership that we start with leadership? If you look at the pyramid on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see what we call the process hierarchy from a lean perspective, where at the bottom of the pyramid, you start with tasks, multiple tasks, then roll up to become an activity, multiple activities, then become a sub-process, all the way up through the process of the business. So if you look at this pyramid as a representation of the entire company that you work for, what sits on top of that company is typically an executive leadership team. And with a cohesive executive leadership team, you have a structured and scalable business. On the right-hand side of that pyramid, you have the different functions in a business that typically start up top with your executive leadership, then they go down to a VP level, then down to director, management, and all other levels. Most individuals in the business, 75 to 80% of the individuals, work at a task activity level where they show up to work each and every day with tasks and activities. But What we really want to do is have all of those tasks and activities roll up to the top of the pyramid, to a leadership initiative, which allows us to look at things, what leaders should actually own in a business. So what leaders own in a business is things like living the core values, things like continuously driving the vision and the mission. A lot of companies out there have core values, have visions and missions, but do they truly actually believe in them? Do they live them day in and day out? If you merely have them up there because it's the thing to do, take them down and remove them, and don't use them. But if you're actually a company that lives your core values, has a vision and a mission that takes you in a certain direction, that's what a lot of employees are looking for in a business. And that's part of what the executive leadership team owns. They need to have these things in place along with developing a business strategy. The business strategy is really the guiding light. It's your true north of the business of where you're going. And every person that's working in the pyramid at different levels, whether it's at the bottom at a task level or at the top at a major process level, needs to be aligned in working in that business strategy. Tied into that business strategy should be where you're doing your innovation. And your innovation should be a part of what you're doing strategically in a business that's bringing your business along and moving it in the right direction. If it's not, you're not guiding your company and all your employees in the business and truly working together in one direction. Along with that, we also need to be providing an environment for continuous growth in both process and people. And what we mean by an environment, i.e., is your culture. Culture out there is talked about a lot in business today, but really what it boils down to is how and what you do every day at work kind of defines what your culture looks like. Along with that, growing new leaders is an important part of what leadership should be doing. At a leadership level, you should be developing new leaders in the business. And that approach has to look at both the task level, which is getting results, and both developing people. There's actually a Zenger survey that was put out that polled about 60,000 different companies. And what it said with this, that leaders that embraced just getting results were considered great leaders only 14% of the time. Leaders that only embraced developing people as a foundation really only were considered great leaders 17% of the time. But leaders that had a balance between getting results and developing people, both the task and the people side of the business, were considered great leaders 74% of the time. So leadership is about, yes, developing your people and your culture, but it's also about getting results. And that's important to know when you have a cohesive leadership team that allows you to be scalable and structured. So what happens when you don't have something that's scalable and cohesive? What you tend to get as an image comparatively is what you see on the right-hand side here, which is what we call a dysfunctional executive leadership team, where you have the same pyramid, you have the same thing, tasks and activities all the way through everything up to the top of the pyramid, which would be your strategic plan. But you start to see that all the functions fall down the pyramid. They slide down the side of it, and then you get VPs working at sub-process level. You get directors and managers working at activity and task level. And what tends to happen is the executive portion of it leaves the strategic portion of it at the top of the pyramid. And you got to start asking yourself the question, who's leading the business? Who's providing the direction in the business and where we're going? So it's critical on the executive side of it to have a functional leadership and cohesive executive leadership team, so we don't fall into what we have on the right-hand side, which tends to lead to firefighting, slow growth, and frustration. If you have this scenario on the right-hand side, which we've seen in businesses before, what you find is that you can't do innovation because we're constantly firefighting. It makes it very hard to develop new products because we're constantly spending all our time each and every day working away at tasks and activities and not really seeing with the direction of where we need to go. So what do you do about it? A lot of companies fall into this problem where Patrick Lencioni said it best in his book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, is it all begins with trust. It starts again at the bottom of the pyramid there with when you have an absence of trust, you can't get into conflict, and then you have a fear of conflict, which that's natural for most human beings, is that we avoid conflict at all costs because it's uncomfortable. But when we don't trust, we fear the conflict. When we fear conflict, we have a lack of commitment. And as you move up, when you get a lack of commitment, we get into our favorite word, which is accountability. And we get avoidance of accountability because we don't trust what others are doing on the team. We don't trust the direction of where the company's going. And when all that happens, we get to an inattention of results, which means we're not getting the result that we want. So from a leadership perspective, it really starts with building a foundation of trust. And it has to start at building trust. Now, there's two components to it. Trust has the component of the task side of it and the character side of trust. So the task side of trust is you may trust somebody based on their capabilities. They may have done something for 30 years and they may be really good at what they do, and you trust that side of it. The other piece that comes into it, which is a lot harder, is the character side of trust. Do you trust who they are, how they operate, how they treat you, the way that they operate, how they think? You may not necessarily agree with what they do, and they may make you feel uncomfortable. So building trust is important, but it is not easy to do. You can build trust over time, and you add layers and layers and layers of trust. Building trust is not a destination. It's a constant that you always have to be doing. And an executive leadership team, if it's a team of 5 or 10, whatever the size might be, they constantly have to be building trust. And they constantly have to be working at it, both on the task side and the character side of it. So when you build multiple layers of trust, you actually get into the next level, which is engaging in healthy conflict. With multiple layers of healthy conflict, you get into gaining commitment. And if you think about it from an executive leadership team perspective, if you're the head of the company, you're the ones that are guiding the company strategically and with innovation. If you're not engaging in healthy conflict and building trust as a team, okay, you're probably second guessing the direction of where we're going. We're probably not supporting each other. And the rest of the company is seeing all this. And it leads to what we commonly see in a lot of businesses is misalignment of the executive head of the divisions. With that misalignment, it becomes a distrust in where the direction of the company is going. And then we get to how do we establish accountability? So building trust gets us to gaining commitment, gets us to establishing accountability. What we tend to see in a lot of companies is everyone wants accountability and they try and force it and they try and micromanage to get accountability in place. But that's not the way to do it. What you do is you build trust, have healthy conflict, gain commitment, and accountability naturally happens. Once you have the accountability, we then get what we all need, which is getting results. And again, if you look at it from the task side of it versus the people side of it, the people side of it starts at the bottom of the pyramid, but it is the foundation of it. It is building that trust so that you can get to the task side, which is the top of the pyramid, which is getting results. Now, all this is well and said, but how do you get there? So first things organizations need to do is one is acknowledge where they're really at and be honest about where they're at. And ask yourself some basic questions. Do I trust everybody on my team? So at an executive level, look around the room and ask yourself, do I trust the people that I work with? Not just on the capability side of it, but truly, do I trust them on the character side of it? You may also want to ask yourself, do I trust myself in what I'm doing on this team? Do I avoid conflict? We naturally, as humans, avoid conflict, and we don't like to get into conflict because it's uncomfortable. But do I purposely avoid it on a leadership team because I know I don't see eye to eye with somebody? Okay. Do we have active gossip or rumor mills in an organization? Okay. Do you even participate in it? Do we have silos in our organization where we have maybe a innovation and design group that kind of works in their own way that's kind of separate from manufacturing, that's separate from product development, and they all do their own things, but they're not interlinked together with one harmonious process that allows the delivery of a product? Do we truly live our core values, or are they just merely words on a board that we have to have because every organization puts them up there these days? Okay. Are there aspects of our culture that we know are toxic, and as leaders in the business, we allow it to happen? Are we contributing to the problem by allowing it to happen? Again, are we suffering from a lack of growth? I mean, look at your business and say, are we meeting our strategic goals year after year? Are we meeting the direction of where we want to go as a business? And if we're not, and we're struggling to get there, it's more than likely because you're suffering from a lack of true leadership in a business. So once you acknowledge that there's a need and be authentic about the fact that you have to have leadership in place, you need to get to an understanding that, again, it's a long-term investment in leadership, just like from a lean perspective, it's that long-term philosophy. Leadership isn't something you do for a day. It's something you consistently have to work at. And the reality is this: not everybody in the business is going to be a leader. Not everybody is going to be a manager. Okay. The goal of in most organizations is structured career growth wise that we all move up in a business, but it is okay sometimes to say, hey, I don't need to get to the top. It must be customized. Leadership is not something that you can just say that it's a one size that fits all organizations. It has to be customized to each and every organization. Realize that it is exponentially harder than the process side of it. We're actually dealing with human beings here. We've got feelings, we got emotions, we got thoughts, we got patterns, we've got characters, we got traits, we got different ways that we do things, and we all do things differently. In an organization that might have 300 people, there's not two people that have the same set of core top five strengths in the business. We all think differently and do things differently, and there's an advantage to understanding that and leveraging those strengths to work with each other to be better at it. It needs to be experiential and hands-on. You can read a book on leadership, but that does not mean you can experience it. You have to go through it and experience how to go do it. And it has to have consistent follow-up. Just like anything that's in place, you can get trained on lean, you can get trained on leadership, you can get trained on innovation, but you have to have the follow-up on it in order to develop it and understand it and kind of work through it. What you should do, just like with innovation, is make leadership strategic. Make it a key initiative as an important part of your business. If you really think about it, if leadership is all about building trust and allowing you to deliver the strategies in the business, innovation, and everything that you're working towards from a productization perspective, it should be part of your number one strategic plan that you're putting forth every day. Invest in it as a competitive advantage. Companies built on trust and have a foundation of trust for leadership, excel beyond any other companies out there, and they naturally build accountability, and they have cultures that people want to go work at and want to go work for. It will contribute to the success of your other initiatives. Naturally, as you build leadership into a business, all your other parts and pieces will come together and be aligned. Going back to that pyramid again, if everybody's aligned at each level of that pyramid, working for a common goal, and you've got leadership at all those different levels working in that direction, it'll be fluid in the direction that you're going, and it will naturally happen. It will actually transform your culture. True leadership in business defines where culture goes, and it will allow you to have growth and be scalable. Planning and communication. So the next piece of this is once you get to the part of acknowledging where it needs to be and understanding it and making it strategic, you need to plan for it. This can come in the form of having kind of one-on-one personal interviews to understand the who's who of the business and getting to know people, understanding where they're coming from. It may be doing assessments of individuals using things like Myers-Briggs or Gallup Strength Finders to understand what are someone's true strengths and how do we leverage those on a team, or how do we leverage those in a leadership group to kind of work with each other and understand each other better as we're working together. Most conflict exists because we truly don't understand ourselves, and then we don't understand the rest of our team. So until we get there, we're always going to be fear of the conflict that's there. But if you know the why behind it, it becomes a lot easier to have constructive conflict on a team, be able to move forward together. We may put organizational focus groups together to go poll the organization and see how does the organization feel about the business, how they feel about the executive leadership team, and what the culture is or what the culture isn't. It'd be the development of a scope and focus that's customized. Again, when you do leadership, it's customized to a business and to a group and to an individual because it's not a one size fits all. And then you really have to communicate that this is what you're doing as a business and where you want to go take it. And once you've got that commitment and understanding that it is strategic and it enables you as an organization to meet your strategic goals and to be innovative, you can go start the journey. So I leave you with one question when it comes to the leadership piece of it. It was probably the most critical is really think about a team that you work on or that you work for. It could be an executive team, it could be a project management team, it could be any team really, and ask yourself this question. Do I truly trust every individual on that team, both on their task side of it and their capability to do what they do and on their character side of it? And then do you trust yourself in this as well on the team that you're working for? Because leadership starts with you first and looking in the mirror and understanding yourself and how you operate on the team in the business. And then so you can actually go work with others in the organization as well.
So thank you for participating, and we are now ready for our Q&A session.